If you like people with honest opinions, then this is for you. This is the Mouth That Roared podcast exclusively on Podbean.com. Also, please remember to follow me on Instagram at the Mouth That Roared podcast. And now, without further ado, here is the host of the Mouth That Roared, me, Chris Sheehan. Hey everybody, and welcome to today's edition of the Mouth That Roared podcast, exclusively on Podbean.com. I am your host, Chris Sheehan, and on today's show, I would like to use your time to discuss a few incidents that took place within this past week. Now, quite a few things have happened within this past week, so allow me to discuss what has happened recently. Now, as many of you probably are aware of this, many of you know that there was a shooting that took place at a synagogue in Pittsburgh. Now, I must admit, this is really getting fucking scary, you know? I mean, this isn't just, it's not going to just stop with religion. I mean, it's going to be anybody and everybody that gets shot up. I mean, it's really scary. It's disgraceful, and it's, you know, this kind of hatred and just all of these killings and all of that stuff just needs to be put to an end. Now, I could tell you all this about the identity of the shooter. Now, I will not reveal his identity because I feel as if it gives way too much. I feel, let me say this, I feel that the media gives entirely too much time to scumbags like this guy, and they don't give nearly enough time to the victims of this senseless tragedy. Now, in total, 11 people were shot to death. And allow me to say this before I move on to the next topic. Anti-Semitism has no place in the world, yet it always seems to make appearances. Now, we need to stop using people as scapegoats and instead find out what the real problems are that are causing people to hate. Scapegoats, speaking of scapegoats, let me say this. Many media outlets have been using the social media app Gab, I guess you can call it the former social media app, because apparently they went defunct after this whole report got leaked. The Gab app recently, the media is claiming that Gab is open to all bigots, homophobes, and evil that roam this earth. Now, I had a Gab account, and I stopped using it after a few weeks, not because I am a bigot or because I am a homophobe, none of that shit, but because I found it more difficult to learn how to use than traditional social media sites, you know, like Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or any of that crap. You know, I found it very much more difficult to use, than regular social media accounts. Now, moving on, because, you know, I want to say this, though, before moving on, actually. I want to say, you know, rest in peace to all the victims who went through this senseless tragedy, because especially one woman in particular who was, I believe, 97 or 96 years old, and she survived the Holocaust, only to be shot to death. And, you know, what a life. I mean, really, you know, it's really pathetic that you escape one tragedy only to be killed in another. Now, I do want to move on, and I want to talk about another asshole who, honestly, really, it's amazing how people are allowed to walk the streets. I mean, honestly, let's put it that way. Now, this guy, I'm sure many of you are probably familiar with this incident, that this guy basically, he took pipe bombs, and the fact that, you know, he sent them to many different places. Apparently, he sent them to many politicians as well as actors and actresses. Now, the suspect apparently was a big Trump supporter. He was an Hispanic guy who apparently, and I'm not going to mention names, he sent bombs to politicians including Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, as well as actor Robert De Niro. Now, even though all of these people mentioned, in my opinion anyway, are scum in their own ways, it still is disgusting that people resort to this kind of behavior. Now, thankfully, nobody was hurt, but again, can't we all just get along? I mean, is that too much to ask? Now, the third and final thing I would like to mention today, this is going to be a quick show, but I had to get all of this off my chest. The third and final thing I want to mention today is, I believe this is why we are so divided in this country. Now, I personally believe every bit of these incidents revolve around President Trump, some way or another. The lack of awareness and respect of the presidency plays a huge part in all of this. Now, the fact that nobody is willing to cooperate is more than enough to blame. Republicans and Democrats should all be ashamed of themselves, first off. The media turning everybody against one another, they should also be ashamed. And everything, really, everybody and everything should honestly just be ashamed of themselves, because nobody seems to help any of the situations, no matter what it is that we try to do. So I guess, with all of this being said, I want to say, rest in peace to all the victims of all of these, the synagogue shooting. And I think I'm going to wrap it up here. So, especially, because I really don't have much else to talk about. So, with that being said, I thank you all for joining me on this edition of the Mouth That Roared podcast. I want to please ask you to remember to follow me on Instagram and download all of my podcasts on Podbean.com. You can even go listen to some of them on YouTube for free. So I appreciate it, and even Podbean as well is free, as many of you know. But I appreciate a follow and a download, and I thank you all for joining me, and goodbye, everybody.